Many stories surround old video game cartridges, but none are as chilling or as dangerous as this one. It all began when a retro gaming collector stumbled upon a forgotten, unlabeled cartridge at a yard sale, tucked away in a shoebox of junk. It stood out not only because it was a Zelda game, but because of the strange markings scratched into the plastic. They weren't part of the original design, and they looked ancient, almost ritualistic. What was most striking, though, was the unmistakable name burned faintly into the label, Majora. The man who bought it, Eric, didn't realize what he had taken home. Excited to revisit the world of the Legend of Zelda, Majora's Mask, he slid the cartridge into his old N64. As the screen flickered to life, something was off. The familiar tune of Clock Town played slower, deeper, as if mourning. The NPCs, usually vibrant and cheerful, stood eerily still in the streets, their faces all turned toward Eric, even though he wasn't controlling Link yet. Paralyzed by a sickening sense of unease, Eric quickly pressed the start button. Initially, the gameplay seemed normal. Eric explored Termina Field, fought some enemies, and admired the nostalgic graphics. But soon, the anomalies began. It started small. Link's reflection in pools of water didn't move identically to him. It stared back ever so slightly longer than it should. Then came the random NPCs whispering bizarre messages like "you shouldn't have come here" and "Majora never rests." Eric chalked it up to a modded game, something the last owner had done to entertain themselves. That is, until he reached the first save point. The screen froze. Text filled the screen, but it didn't resemble any in-game text he recognized. Instead, it read, "Are you afraid to play with time?" Before the word time distorted, stretching and twisting across the screen. The game reset itself, but this time, Clock Town wasn't the whimsical village it once was. The walls were cracked. The moon overhead wasn't simply menacing, it was alive, pulsating and bleeding red light. More alarming was what Eric noticed in the shadows between buildings. Glowing red eyes watched him constantly, darting away whenever he moved closer. Uneasy, but unready to stop, he pressed on. After hours of disturbing gameplay, Eric tried turning off the console, convinced he'd had enough. But the power button wouldn't work. He even unplugged the console, but the image of Link's hollow, decayed face remained burned into his TV screen. Panicked, he searched online for answers about hacked or cursed cartridges. And that's when he discovered the other stories. There were forums dedicated to the Majora curse, warning people about tampered cartridges that seemed to prey on obsession and time. Some users reported feeling watched while playing. Others said they heard whispers even after the console was turned off. A few accounts were more extreme, detailing players who vanished inexplicably, leaving only their gaming setups behind. Eric didn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he swore he heard the Clock Town theme, its slowed rhythm tormenting him. Desperate to rid himself of the cartridge, he decided to destroy it. But as he reached for it, it buzzed. The plastic physically vibrated in his hands. When he finally smashed it open with a hammer, he found not just wires but something unimaginable. Inside was a tiny, brittle bone. Carved into its surface was the same faint engraving that had been scratched onto the outside of the cartridge. That night, he received an anonymous email from an address he didn't recognize. It read, "What you broke wasn't your time to break." Eric moved out of his apartment the next day, but his neighbors said they heard strange music coming from his empty unit for weeks after he left. If you enjoyed this unsettling story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more strange and mysterious discoveries like this. Stay safe out there. Some things should remain forgotten.